I'm going to call the planning board meeting for Wednesday, June 7th, 2017 to order at 7:05 p.m. Then a roll call, please.
Yes. Ron Terrasio, are you here? Mike Carpenter, are you here?
I partially.
Which all of us are partially here. Helen Hardy is here, Joe Perry, Chair, are you here?
Yes.
Excellent. Also present are new players Cheryl Maynard and Scott Millar and I forgot your name.
Jen West.
Say it one more time.
Jen West.
Jen. Okay, and from
Gross
Market
and Narragansett Bay Research Reserve.
Yeah.
Yep.
and Jeff Sheldon and Gordon Rogers, Town Council.
And Tom Mercier is
Tom
excused.
Mercier, excuse Tom Mercier,
And Richard
Rick
Sparks.
Carpenter,
Richard Sparks
Sparks.
is excused. And I haven't heard from Sergio, so if he doesn't show up, he's not excused. He's just... I haven't heard anything. Okay. This time I'll accept the motion for the approval of minutes for May 17th.
Sent in the vice chair,
Mike,
He's moving up. So moved, Joe. Have a second? Second by Ron. All right, any discussion on the minutes?
I had one question. And it's just a question. I think, but maybe not. Okay, no. No, I have for future reference, in the boilerplate that we put in after each one of our things, it always says suitable building sites. And so when we're approving a solar installation or a, something like that, which doesn't have building sites, it seems inappropriate. So just, it was in both of the applications, both of the approvals at the last meeting, both for solar, neither of which had any kind of buildings involved.
So suitable building site
Oh,
under,
Yeah,
under the 13, is that where you'd like to add it?
Well, it's for like
it
subdivision.
says suitable building sites.
How is that,
Oh, I
why
see
isn't
what
it
you mean.
buildable
Okay.
for the solar farm?
Yeah.
Great,
It's just-
so anyway, that's all,
Okay.
that's my only observation.
I had contacted Cheryl on some changes. I know quite a few
Okay,
things actually. On the applicants present, it said that the representatives of Foster Renewables were representing well-known community out there, which they were.
oh, oops,
Yes.
See the last one, it
good catch.
says well-known, but it was Foster Renewables.
Oh, right, you're right,
Well-known was part of the.
yeah, okay, so,
And there's a motion that Tom had made.
which page?
Do you have any thoughts, Cheryl?
Yes, well, you had one on page 2, halfway down, after Mr. Sparks, Mr. Carey opened the public meeting, that hadn't made it in. On page 2.
Read the rules pertaining to the public hearing.
So just prior to where it says, Mr. Carey asked if anyone
Yeah.
would like to speak in favor.
Oh,
Prior to that, he opened the public meeting, so we have that.
okay.
And then Joe, the next one was on page 5. That
Right.
was the one that you mentioned about,
Yeah.
it actually needs to
It's,
say that, do you want to go ahead or should I read it?
Yeah, you can read it.
It should read, Mr. Mercer amended the motion to omit condition 9 to not allow combination of the preliminary and final plan. And then Ms. Hardy inquired if we could separate at this point. And then Ms. Achille said that it had not been advertised that way, so it could not be combined.
See that?
And that should be changed to,
I read it as it should be instead
You
of,
amended, made a motion to amend the, to not combine, remember, because it was combined as a condition. You wanted to not combine it, then we voted to, the motion failed.
right,
And then you had questioned if we could do it at the next meeting,
oh, right,
and we have to advertise it. You know, that's both.
yes,
So we can advertise it as one, and then we decide to do both. So
right.
that's what the solicitor advised me.
That's
And
right,
then- oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, that's all.
Page 6, just before that second paragraph, Mr. Carey, where we would inject, Mr. Carey opened the public meeting for comments.
Okay, yes,
And then remove one more paragraph down that Mr. Carey opened the public meeting. Just omit opened the public hearing and. So it would read, Mr. Carey asked if anyone would like to speak in favor.
okay,
And then one more line down. Mr. Carey asked if anyone would like to speak against or make any, and just add in additional comments.
okay.
And that was all I had from you? Yeah.
Any other discussion on the minutes?
Okay, so this is to approve the minutes as
Amended.
amended. We're correcting. As corrected, okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
So all in favor of the minutes as amended?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. We don't have to.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry, I didn't have to pass in my, editing. My editing credentials, I'm so sorry.
Okay, moving on. We have correspondence. The solicitor's still not here. So, there's a letter that Joanna had, and sent to Mr. Weinstein for DEM on that Round Hill subdivision that we discussed. It was included in your packet. I don't know if anybody had any questions or anything on it.
I would have liked to see the vote. It just says the planning board disallowed or whatever that was. I'd like to see the vote as part of the letter, but
Did you want to
that's
come
next
back to
time.
it later when Joanna gets here? and
I'll
discuss
talk
it?
to him about next time.
Okay.
It is what it is.
Any other discussion on that letter? All right. All right, board members' reports. Do we have anything in line trust?
I've been doing a lot of stewardship, so I wanted to pass on to the planning board, and I think we're a small town, and everybody who knows what's going on with land trust can tell their friends and neighbors. But at the Hopkins area, trails are not marked, but the Hopkins and the Hayfield trails are all marked, and the Dunbar trails are all marked. And actually, they were doing a lot of clearing too. So as part of the clearing, they're taking out some fairly good-sized trees and they're defining the parking areas, so folks will have an easier time, getting in, finding where to park their cars. And with the new trail markers are pretty bright and obvious, and they're trying to network them together so they go from one property to another on the same color trails and things like that. So Dennis Stern, I think it's Tom Boyden, just doing a great job. Walter obviously getting a little older, so he's appreciative of that too. But, every time I go to a meeting, they're working on these trails, they're working on the maps, they're gonna publish on the web, and they're gonna have maps available at the town hall too for our folks here in Foster, so more people can take advantage of the land trust properties and the trails that they've placed out there. So, other than that, business as usual, so.
Thank you, Mike. Conservation Commission, there's no report at this time. Okay, after this major land development, there are none. The next thing on the agenda under zoning is the continued discussion re Foster Farm and Forest Accessory Business Overlay District. We have Scott Millar and Jen West here to review this with us. Scott did a lot of work and presented this draft for us, put it together. The board had previously voted to allow them to go forward with the draft. And we appreciate their work, and I'd like Scott, if he wants to do a little overview of everything to get us started.
Thank you. I appreciate your indulging me on such a beautiful night. It's probably the first time we've seen the sun in a fabulous holiday. Anyway, thanks for coming out. Here are the objectives that we're trying to get through this evening. I'm just going to give you a quick overview. I know you had a chance to look at it. I want to get your input on some broader policy issues. We may not dive down into the weeds necessarily tonight. Get some questions, comments, we'll talk about next steps. First thing I want to do is talk about some policy issues. These are some of the questions that, as I'm going through here, you might want to think about. And the first is, does the draft meet your objectives to allow more uses on farms and forests? These are the same questions on the sheet that David posted. Think about it, are you comfortable with the new uses proposed? Do they really fit the town of Foster? Are there any proposed uses that should be prohibited? And certainly it's easy to subtract. And should farms, forests be defined as small, medium, and large? We talked about that last time. Should all proposed uses be allowed by right? You might feel more comfortable with some as a special use. And do the performance standards that are in here, do they address the potential impacts that you feel could be a concern? So, let's review real quick. These are the uses that you allow by right currently in Foster. You can raise animals for sale, raise crops and forest products, sale of produce raised on the premises. This is what you allow by special use. You can raise more than 35 animals, you can have a commercial nursery structure, you can have a poultry farm with more than 10,000 birds, and one 200 square foot wooden building. I'm assuming that that's for like a product stand, something like that? Or, because it's a fairly small, but that's it. That's what you allow. That's pretty limited, as we've already talked about. So this is what I'm proposing. And again, this is just a starting point. Hay rides, tractor rides, sleigh rides. Pretty common on farms. Crop mazes. Indoor-outdoor viewing, feeding, petting of animals. Indoor-outdoor classes, seminars, and tours. Pick your own crops, and very popular. Farm home food production, that's in accordance with state law already. So since state law already allows this, it just seemed like it made sense to make it clear it would be allowed in town. Commercial greenhouses, probably already have some. Farm forest-based retail, you're basically saying if you can grow it on your farm or your forest, you have the right to sell it on your premise. Farm forest-based retail of agricultural forest-related products, sorry, it's been a long day. That would be something that you would be basically making on your property, on your farm or forest. It would be something like art, crafts, clothing, quilts, those kinds of materials, and that is specified in the definition. Farm forest retail sales building, and again, we're allowing that at various sizes. There is a limit on that, and that's something we can talk about later, how big you might want to go with that. Farm winery, brewery, distillery. Meeting space, a lot of farmers are leasing out old barns, whatever, for meetings. Equestrian facilities, farm cafe, this would be a very limited food service. It sort of goes along with farm home food production. Farm forest product processing. So if you have a forest, that means you can basically cut and split wood and sell it. You might have a small portable sawmill, those kinds of activities. And farmers, that's really the value added for them is processing. And you can have farm forest-based contracting business. That would be somebody who might be in the trades. You already allow a home-based occupation where somebody can have an office. This would allow somebody to perhaps store some incidental materials in an outbuilding. Gardening or landscaping materials produced on the farm or forest, such as mulch, soil amendments, compost, those kinds of things. Raising and sale of livestock. Meat processing. This is something that Exeter and Middletown felt that they wanted to allow. Again, this is open for discussion, but the U.S. Department of Agriculture has very stringent regulations on meat processing. You have to jump through a lot of hoops. And what farmers are doing now is they have these small animal unit processing units that look like a small portable camping trailer. So they bring them on their farm, they process the animals it's self-contained, and sometimes those units actually go off the farm. Some farmers are actually sharing. Department of Health has allowed that, U.S. Department of Agriculture has allowed that. So again, it's small scale. This is not a large industrial slaughterhouse by any means. But again, that's something we can discuss further. Wedding receptions. Right now, I'm saying that's the only use I'm suggesting if you allow it as a special use. It's created the most controversy statewide by far. I'm sure you've read some of the articles about that. In parentheses, as you remember, we did that, we showed a lot of slides back at the meeting of February 1st. We had over 50 people. 66% thought that was a use that was appropriate for foster, just to bring them back. It was one that didn't get, probably had one of the lowest approval levels. And last but not least, product stain. Obviously, if you grow something, you have to have a reasonable ability to sell it, and a lot of towns allow product stains by law. So those are the uses. I wanted to make you aware there's a bill pending in the General Assembly, I wanted to give you a heads up on this, where somebody is amending the Right to Farm Act, they're proposing to amend it, and they're going to define what they call secondary agricultural operations, that those are the ones listed in white, most of which are already suggesting you allow by right. The one on the bottom, festivals, weddings, and special events, I wanted to bring to your attention because that is the one that's creating a lot of controversy, because anything that's considered a farm, and farm can be defined very broadly, someone would be allowed by right to have weddings, banquets, etc. It's creating a lot of controversy. I actually testified against this statute. I think the best place to make decisions about what should be allowed in a particular town is in the town. You know your town best. You know what's appropriate to foster. There shouldn't be state laws that tell you what uses should be allowed in the community. I feel very strongly about that. So I know there's a lot of pushback on this. We're hoping it doesn't pass because I think it could probably do more harm than good. But again, just wanted to bring it to your attention. In the event it does pass, then we probably want to go back and put some more performance standards in for weddings. If you're going to allow it You could still allow it as a special use, but you have to set up some very explicit criteria to give the zoning board some grounds for denying a special use. We can come back and talk about that in the
Who
event.
is we, because you stated we are hoping that doesn't pass?
There's a lot of people that don't want this bill to pass. Grow Smart Rhode Island is opposed to this particular bill. There's a lot of different groups that don't think this is appropriate. Again, we think that the decision should be made at the local level.
How's
Trying to
it,
figure out who we is. So
Okay.
you're saying you personally and other people.
how's
Me
it,
personally and other people.
Thank you.
A lot of other communities are weighing in.
Thanks.
Do you have a question right here?
yeah, I'd also like, how's the Rhode Island Farm Bureau weighing in on that? Are they for or against?
You know, at the hearing, they did not come and testify. on behalf
Betancourt
of-
wasn't there?
They were not there.
How about Ken Ayers? How's Ken Ayers with Department of Agriculture?
The DEM has been told not to testify in these types of
So
legislation.
both of those have not weighed in.
They have not weighed in.
Be interesting to see how they, like, Betancourt weighs in on a letter anyway.
I would think that the Farm Bureau would obviously be in favor, but I think they're also concerned about the pushback too. Not every farm is probably suitable for a wedding. I think that would create a lot of problems.
Well, I do agree with the special use, but I'd also like to add, while I'm asking you a question, almost everything you have on there, I believe is already permitted in this town and already going on. We have corn mazes, we have the tractor rides, we have petting and feeding of the animals, we have wineries already in town allowed. Everything you've got on there is actually going on,
Right.
and I believe allowed and currently happening in town.
Well,
So,
I'll defer to your town solicitor, but my reading of the ordinance, those uses are not allowed by right.
this
So
guy's
people
doing,
people could be doing them,
firewood, they're all doing it.
but the problem has been, in other communities, neighbors move in, real estate changes hands, someone may not like that neighbor doing that particular activity.
They're raising livestock for slaughter and selling the meat.
Right.
I know multiple are doing
Right,
that.
but what happens is they'll go to the town council, first of all, they'll go to the zoning official or the zoning board, and they'll file a formal complaint. In the event there's action isn't taken there, they can actually go to Superior Court.
I can think of 2 slaughterhouses in operation in town now.
All right, let's get back to this.
We read through this.
Right.
Yeah.
That came to my mind too, but I was gonna let.
Well, I just want to know why I was interrupted. I guess I can't ask any questions, but
Well, you can ask questions, but let's get through.
And Scott, you know,
When he's
we
done,
talked
we're
about
gonna,
this in
you know,
February
go over this
also.
into depth,
Right.
you know, we'll find who wants to just do his presentation first, and then we'll go back. and-
So let's just talk about town review for a second. I mean, all these uses, since I'm proposing that they be allowed by right, I think it's a good idea that obviously somebody take a look at it to make sure that it's eligible, it's fully in compliance with the performance standards and the other issues that we're laying out here. There's a number of options in which you can do that. And we sort of have a tiered approach laid out. Some towns have decided that they wanted their administrative officer or town planner to do the initial review. That's what Exeter has decided to do. Middletown has a full-time zoning official. So in that town, that person is going to do it. It doesn't matter how you do it as long as you designate someone to do it and it's clear in the ordinance. But that's a decision at some point in time you'll need to make, not necessarily this evening, but at some point in time you sort of need to designate someone. As the uses become more intense, I'm suggesting sort of a limited development plan review that the planning board would assess. So for example, let's say it's going to be a large retail sales building, maybe parking for 20 cars. That's something the planning board is going to want to take a look at, just as you would normally for any commercial use, to make sure that it fully complies with the ordinance. So let's talk about some of the accessory use conditions that I'm suggesting. Again, these would be the so-called performance standards. At a minimum, that's something you have to comply with. First and foremost, we're making it clear the accessory use established by this section, and I just sort of randomly assigned it to section 23. Again, that's open to discussion. I can talk to Cheryl and your town solicitor where you think it might fit best. I just had to park it somewhere, so I put it in your supplementary regulations as a starting point. But I'm making it clear these uses shall remain subordinate to the principal bona fide farm or forest use and their existence shall not be considered the establishment of a legal non-conforming principal use. It's important to make that distinction. The signage I pretty much took from your existing sign ordinance, although I just wanted to point out your current standard allows up to a 4 square foot sign, and I know other towns allow a little bit bigger. And 4 feet makes sense if it's just somebody advertising their street number or whatever. If it's going to be a business, you might want to consider a little bigger. And I'm just giving you a range. Exeter allows up to 6 square feet. Middletown's a more suburban town, so they go up to 10. 10 might be too big for a Foster. Just driving up here this evening, I was paying attention to signs and trying to get a relative idea how big they are. I didn't see anything 10 square feet, probably in the neighborhood of 6 is what I saw along the road. The biggest sign I think I saw was is it the Highland Gun Club? Is that, it's on 102?
No, to,
2 weeks
Is that-
out, then everywhere.
That's probably a little bigger than 6. I didn't get out and measure it, that's just a quick eyeball, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, I agree, and I think you had 20 feet, or there's 20 feet in this draft.
Right.
That seems too big.
That's too big.
Yeah.
My wife scolded me about that. Some people are very sensitive to signs, they don't want to see any signs. Others don't care. But you have to have obviously a standard that
Right, 10,
works for you.
maybe 50.
And that's something you might want to mull over a little bit. Off-street parking, again, this is right from your ordinance. It's really important if you're going to have people come to your property, they can't park in the street, very narrow, rural roads, that just creates huge problems. This is, again, right from your ordinance, but the yellow is new because your existing standard requires a hard surface for parking, and that probably isn't appropriate for these uses. If a farmer's having hay rides or something like that, he doesn't want to have a paved parking lot. He's going to have them park in the field or some area like that that's off the street. So this is just making it clear that kind of parking is okay. Again, you would still be taking a look at it, but you probably don't want to see it paved.
Yeah, no, that doesn't actually reflect what we've been encouraging.
Right.
people to do.
It's sort of old, it's expensive for them, and it probably detracts from your character of the town. The lighting is pretty much from your existing ordinance as well. What I did add is the International Dark Sky Association standard. That's very common in a lot of rural towns, and that just makes it clear. If somebody doesn't know how to do this, they have a very, very extensive website that gives you a lot of ideas on how they might comply with that. It's not an onerous requirement. The key here is to avoid somebody shining lights into your windows at night. That's going to create a nuisance. It's not hard to do. It's not hard to comply with. For setbacks, I'm suggesting a minimum setback of 150 feet from the front yard, 100 feet from the side and rear lot lines. Since you have large lots, it shouldn't be hard for somebody to comply with that. And again, this would be a minimum setback. If you think something is going to have the potential to create a lot of noise, something like a wedding reception, you'd probably want to encourage even greater setbacks than that. But that's just a starting point. This is screening. This is pretty standard kind of language. You're just making it clear that you're trying to screen any outdoor equipment, storage of materials to the extent you reasonably can. Same thing with storage. If we have equipment and materials related to the business, and it has to be stored, try to store it indoors to the extent that you can. Anything outside, try to screen it. Fencing, same thing, just making it clear how that would work. Noise, we talked about this last time. My understanding is you currently don't have a noise standard in your ordinance. And for these types of uses, I think it would be very important to have one.
I don't think that's true. I think we do
I
have a
couldn't
property
find
line
it.
down.
No, we
So my mistake if it's in there.
No, we do not.
We don't have a decibel.
We don't have a decibel.
Right.
Okay.
And so that's it.
You have to have a measurable standard,
Or it's not,
otherwise
yeah,
it's
it's
really
useless.
unenforceable.
Yeah.
Right.
So for all intents and purposes, we have no noise ordinance.
Okay, we've been around, yeah.
So we talked about last time about how loud 65 decibels would be. I showed you some illustrations of what that would look like. And I'm suggesting between 7 and 10 p.m., that would be the noise standard. As you get into the evening, it drops down to 55 decibels. That's more consistent with background noise, ambient noise levels. And again, it's just showing you it's measured at the property boundary of the receiving land use. It's measured, this is just, making it clear what's going to be measured, so there's nothing ambiguous about this. And it allows you to have a spike in the noise for 15 minutes over a 60-minute period. Again, that's pretty common in most town noise ordinances. Somebody might be starting up some equipment, and it's loud for the first 5 minutes or so, and then it ramps down, and it's compliance with the noise standard. You don't want to give somebody a hard time for 15 minutes of a loud noise. And making it clear, noise from normal farming activities exempt, that's right out of the Right to Farm Act. And you're also making it clear, noise from temporary construction is obviously exempt. Somebody's building a barn or outbuilding, it's going to be noisy. Licensing, I don't have access to your code of ordinances. A lot of towns have licensing requirements for peddlers, hawkers, those kinds of activities. I'm not sure what Foster does. Again, that's something to check with your town solicitor, but we can put stock language in there. Certain uses would still may require a license from the town council. And that's a good thing, because then the town council can place restrictions that are not permissible via zoning. For example, they can put hours of operation, if they wanted to establish patron limits, any unique site features that need to be addressed can be addressed in that license. So it's sort of a powerful tool to control perhaps some of the more intensive uses. So let's get back to the policy questions that you have in front of you. Does the draft meet your objective to allow more uses on farms and forests? I have a
It's
question.
okay. No,
That's-
this is.
Oh, that would be my.
You want me to turn the lights on?
My notes.
I get it.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, thank you.
I have a comment. Yeah, go ahead. I'm a little concerned, and anybody knows I'm pretty pro anything. I'm a little concerned about farm and forest products in the way of firewood as a commercial venture. There's one guy on Route 116 down in Coventry, and he's right next to two neighbors, okay? A guy running a commercial business of firewood versus selling his own firewood, 20 cords a year, or cutting himself 20 cords a year, versus bringing stuff on and having a commercial venture of cutting firewood all day, 6 days a week, and the conveyor belt and the loader and this and that. If we can't have a gravel bank because of the noise of leveling, I think this should be, commercial firewood should definitely be a special use permit.
I think that what you're talking about rises above the level of accessory use.
Well,
So
that's
that would be-
why I'm mentioning it, okay? So because one thing, there's an example I have that there was a portable sawmill, okay, that now has 3 permanent buildings and a permanent saw. And it doesn't bother me, okay, but these things have a way of growing. So again, I hate this idea of the planning board reviewing stuff once it's been permitted, and because that particular facility is now grandfathered by time and usage. So, I'm for all of these things, but they do need somebody looking at the facilities that we allow, and I would allow them all. However, using that particular facility that I have in mind right now, that's a warehousing or commercial, who knows, 100 and something acres. Because nobody ever looked at it, and the building official we had at the time was friends with the person that was running the facility, so it sort of grew. It's a steel buildings, okay, so I'm for all of these things, but there has to be some way that we're gonna check on these facilities. We don't have a full-time zoning official. It's not a police, what do you call it? So,
Enforcement issue.
yeah, the enforcement issue is very important, and these things shouldn't come back to us unless we're gonna have an officer that's gonna go out and view the facilities. And if you wanna elect somebody to do that, and as soon as they grow past their point, then somebody has to stop it and start the court fight. So, that's my one comment. And small towns are very interesting because what we do for our friends, but we wouldn't allow for some guy to move into town and do, but we'd allow one of our friends to get away with it very nicely. So, just a comment. The other thing is, Scott, if you give me a piece of paper to read, and then you read the same thing to me, all right? I'm looking for new information,
Sure.
okay?
But what I'm doing is just walking you through it real quickly.
But I did read
Sure.
it, so if you said this is what I'm gonna do tonight, I wouldn't have read it. Got it?
Yep, got it.
Okay.
Scott, I believe what Ron was getting at was commercial logging. Now, what's in here, a lot of it is harvesting the trees that are on your property, I believe you said. So you would be cutting your own forest and using it. It wouldn't be-
Or selling it,
Right, but it would be your trees.
Right.
If you had 100 acres, you'd be cutting your 100 acres. You wouldn't be trucking trees in from other people's property in this, this particular ordinance, I believe, is supposed to be designed to use your property.
Right. There, I should point out, Exeter is allowing an individual, he's a fairly big logger. Keel Miller, you may know the name. He's on Route 165 in Exeter. He does harvest wood from other sites, he brings it back to his property, and he processes it. But it's set back pretty far off the road, you can't see it from 165. I might have even showed you an example of his property in one of our views. That, again, every town is different. He's been a good neighbor, there haven't been any complaints on that particular site, in that particular location, it's worked pretty well. The town feels comfortable. Somebody else, as Ron just explained, may not be as good a neighbor, and it could create a problem. So it could be something you allow as a special use.
I just wanted to ask, is there a logical way to, there's a lot of different things here. Is there a logical way to go through, and just sort of check off, say, starting on the first page, hay rights, tractor rights, sleigh rights, yes, we do that already, blah, blah, blah. Is there, I'm either going to suggest that we use the draft that Scott provided for us and just run through it that way, or have somebody else propose something that makes sense.
I honestly think Scott's draft is what we should work off of, add or subtract off of that. Gordon's
Yeah.
presentation is absolutely right as to all the things that already exist, so I don't know how you would deny a small slaughterhouse when I think I know 3 of them.
Yeah.
Too, so.
But And as Scott said, it's a scale thing. And so
Right.
Scott is really good at things like, supplying those little detailed, things that, that Ron, you point out, that is lacking in our ordinance. And so, maybe this is the right time to
This just makes it
insert it.
clear that they are allowed, as Scott said.
Yeah.
If you read the ordinance, they're not mentioned and they're not allowed in the ordinance at this time, even though they do exist. So by creating this, you're saying, okay, you can do this. And then, certain things are a little higher level where, we have to decide how we're gonna deal with them. The basics, we can go through this list, A, B, C here,
Yeah,
of the allowed uses, and
yeah.
if anybody has anything on that list that
If I may though,
disagree.
can I bring your attention back to that question? Because if the answer is no, then I need to go back and do some work.
Well, I think that's,
So if the answer is yes, then maybe we can move, if it's okay, perhaps we can move on to the next question.
all right, wait, I want to suggest that at this point, I think if everybody agrees with Helen's statement, and that is Scott's proposal is a good starting point, I think this proposal should be lengthened with a writing space under each proposal. And we go home and do individual work versus we do group work and come back with our written comments. There may be numbers of items that there are no comments, and each one of us will read something different. So we do individual homework versus group work and spend hours and hours talking about our individual problems. So I think that's my suggestion, that we take either the planner or Scott, if you would reprint this with
Larger spacing.
larger spacing between each item.
Did you send it in a Word format?
I did.
Okay, so, because I don't get the text, I'm happy to do that for them.
Okay,
and
Alright.
thank you.
So that way, we can individually write it, come back, and in fact, maybe we'll give it to the planner to compilate, and then come back and talk about everybody's, is that against, open meetings?
As long as you don't talk about it,
So we
If
could,
you do it. in
you
the-
make your own notes, and then we come back, that's fine.
no, I'm saying, can we make our own notes, send it to the planner and have her compilate
Yes,
them?
that's fine.
All right, good.
Okay.
Thanks.
So I'm assuming the answer to number one is yes. So, and I guess what Ron is suggesting, to do some more work on number two, are you comfortable with the new uses proposed? And it sounds like at least one, Ron wants to take a harder look at.
Right.
And then, are there any proposed uses that should be prohibited? And I think that's an important question to ask. And again, you don't necessarily have to come to a conclusion on that tonight, but do any jump out at you as like, oh my God, that doesn't fit in Foster?
That's why I'm suggesting that we do this work, because we're not gonna be answering these questions. Reading this, all right, is one thing. Reading it, writing our comments about it, bringing compilations and sending them back out,
Sure.
will answer all these questions.
Okay.
Well, like you said, Ron, I think, when Scott, is there anything that, other than, stuff you wanna, look over and make notes on? I mean, is there anything that jumps out at you that you definitely don't want in the town, that's in this draft?
Not for me, but at this point, you have somebody in the audience.
Jeff?
I hate to backtrack. Does the draft meet your objectives to allow more uses on farms and forests? And it even ties in, are you comfortable with the new uses proposal? I'm willing to bet cash money that all the people that we've already talked about that are already doing these things are in some kind of non-compliance. So absolutely, you're gonna see less, rather than more.
Say that again, Jeff, I'm sorry, see
I just would believe that most of the people that are doing this now, for instance, put eggs out at the street or have a little farm stand or whatever, I would bet you, if you go through the rules, you're gonna find that most of those people are in non-compliance in some way, shape, or form right now.
But they pre-exist.
I don't think that's true.
I don't think pre-existing is gonna make a difference once they pass the rule.
No, pre-existing before the ordinance, Jeff, does make a difference.
Zoning can only be proactive, it can't be retroactive.
So prohibited, this, I'm sorry, is a little petty, but, starting right at the top, it said indoor active viewing, feeding and petting of animals, and I just inserted farm animals there, because
No petting the lions and
No
tigers.
lions,
lions, tigers, and bears, oh my.
I kept it broad because there's a person in Exeter who actually has llamas. Is a llama
That's a
a
farm
farm
animal.
animal? I mean,
that's a farm animal.
and now you get into this
Sure,
debate,
right?
you know?
So I-
Sure.
for
Right.
So.
So sometimes you begs the question, what's a
Yeah,
farm
yeah.
animal?
What's
So,
but as Gordon, I mean, that's, I looked at
but
that.
you're right, you don't
and I
want
thought,
lions. I don't think that's gonna happen anyway, but.
I think that these policy questions that you provided really should be a guideline for when you're making your notes at home.
Yeah,
I think these are excellent questions
Yeah.
to kind of sink teeth into
yeah.
the ordinance.
Just get you to think about it.
Yeah.
I-
I'm sure you'll think of other things, but this is just a starting point.
Yeah,
I would like to add, when you start going on with what Ron mentioned, when something becomes commercial, that you clearly state at what point you determine it commercial, because if you don't put them guidelines in,
yeah.
it's very hard to enforce it, and then you get into mixed messages.
Right,
So like on the wood thing, just because he brought it up, you're not allowing anybody to bring wood from anywhere else and process it on their property is considered commercial, or you're allowed to do that up to a certain amount of core, but then how do you regulate how much the guy's selling if he's doing it for cash? So there's multiple hard ways of doing that,
Right.
and I can think of at least many people that bring logs in, saw them, logs in, cut them, sell them for firewood.
Pretty common,
Most people, believe it or not, in Providence get their cordwood from out in the country,
right?
not so, and that's processed all over the state in the rural communities, so.
That's why we set this up as a performance-based approach, so basically, if they can meet these criteria, maybe you don't care where the wood's coming from, because not many people can probably harvest that much wood from their own site on a regular
Correct.
basis to sell.
Well, I'm gonna suggest that, no, that, in the area, that there have been problems from, people bringing in wood from other, places and also introducing,
That's a state law.
I think
right,
That's a state law issue.
it's probably important
Those bugs
to
know where to connect.
provide a definition for subordinate use.
Right.
So because I don't think that's in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, accessory use is defined.
But the use is supposed to be subordinate to, or, so I think maybe we even need to define that, so that there's a definition of what's a secondary, or even qualified accessory even more. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah,
Give
sorry.
people some examples, because the legal definition can be misinterpreted.
Yeah,
And that gets expensive.
yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
But we can, yeah,
exactly.
through the
So-
definitions, we can define the different levels.
And sometimes it can be a little subjective, I have to be honest, it's
Yeah.
not a black and white in
Right.
all cases.
because you could finagle subordinate too. But I think if we provide a clearer definition, that might help with the issue, especially with the
That's why
logging
we
and stuff.
have lawyers.
the definition section of this draft was very, very helpful
Oh,
because,
thank you.
I started out saying, wait a minute, what's small, what's medium, what's large, what do they mean, what are they talking about, having a food, what do you call it?
Farm home food production? Farm
you know,
cafe.
Having a cafe,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
having a cafe. And that's all suggested in here, so I thought, all of those things were the most.
For example, like we have a winery in town,
Right.
and I thought it was assumed that when they grow their grapes, they make the wine, but that is, they're buying wine and selling wine. All that wine that they come out, almost a very small amount of the wine that they produce is not, they're buying and reselling wine, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no vineyard there.
Yeah,
There is a vineyard.
There is a vineyard.
Yes, there was a vineyard there.
So here again is, that's the perfect.
at what point do you stop it, you
I
know?
wasn't gonna say that, but there's a perfect example of getting an approval, I don't even know if it was approved, or just being allowed, or just starting it, and then all of a sudden, you're buying grapes and buying wine and selling wine from other places, so now that's a commercial venture. So we actually need this,
Yeah.
okay?
You're right.
But on the other hand, okay, once you do it, you better have somebody or some way to check it, an enforcement agent.
So you
Well,
should also add something about what happened, what's a violation, what happens for a violation, and who is going to.
That's why we have a lawyer.
That's why we always.
No, that's why we have a planning board to formulate that, so the lawyer can review it to see if it's correct or not.
Okay.
But I believe vineyard is considered an agricultural operation, that's why it didn't
Except-
go through any,
Yeah, but it's,
they didn't have to
you're
go to the
right,
zoning board or the
you're
planning
right,
board. to
except
open it.
when they started to bring
Right,
wine in,
yeah,
then it
because it's not
became,
regulated.
became a retail establishment.
Correct.
It was no
Because nobody
longer.
knows.
I mean, I hate, for example, Little Rhodey Egg Farm. What's a chicken farm? Them chickens ain't making milk, cheese, butter, bread, juice. I have no problem with it, they're grandfathered in. This will stop any of that moving in the future, because here's what happens by hand of sleight, it's just, it becomes something other than it is. So, I mean, that's why I'm saying, when you pick something that you want to put a limit on, it says, this is where it becomes not a rural thing, but becomes a commercial, you need to be very clear to some extent of what that step is.
Right now, that's a manufacturing warehouse.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, that's a commercial.
But, and we couldn't stop
Obviously.
from being torn down, believe it or not. I don't believe, the whole place being torn down, and as big as it is, building a warehouse and a manufacturing plant there, because that's what it is. But I'm not, after the word. If I bring in, no, if I produce eggs, all right, and I have, we shouldn't have a, hypothetically, if I produce something, a building that's 200 by 40, and I have semis there, and I bring semis in with other products, and I repack a semi, and I send it out, that's a manufacturing warehouse. Look at the lawyer.
So what you're saying is they bring eggs in from elsewhere and then just put them in their cart and.
And milk, and I wish we weren't talking about a particular item, but they bring in other products.
Yeah.
Then fill a box truck with the stuff they have and other
In
stuff.
addition.
Chocolate milk, coffee milk,
And then go
syrup.
out all over.
Yeah.
That's a manufacturing warehouse site that we're never gonna stop.
Listen,
I don't know that I'd call it manufacturing, but it's like a distribution.
All right, so it's a 200 by 40 distribution center.
Yeah, but I think this does provide some
Right.
protection where it says this is not gonna be a grandfather use, so that will help.
I just want to add, he's a great member, and to put a point to fact, he is the largest year-round employer in the town of Forest, other than the town of Forest. So I'm just using that as an example. He's been my neighbor forever. He's a great neighbor. I'm pro-business, and I didn't have a problem going in that direction, but, you know, at a certain point, if that happens on every single corner, you've got distribution centers everywhere.
You have a different town, and that's the.
Obviously, yeah, you're right.
So that's why
It's gotta
we
be
need
defined,
this.
I mean, obviously.
The one
what-
thing-
That's why we have a lawyer.
But by having an ordinance, I think that it's gonna help a lot, because we can actually define these things. protect
And I
ourselves.
think sometimes with the planning board, and this isn't to throw stones, you become very restrictive because, and I'll go back to the cording of wood from somebody who has in the winter supplemented income by buying cordwood from a local logging guy and worked all winter cutting, splitting and selling. It's a lot of work, but 50 to 100 cords is nothing and not a single complaint from anywhere. So, I mean, what I see sometimes is the planning board doesn't understand the amount, and they'll say, all right, 20 cord limit. 20 cord, my house burns 10 cord. Yeah, so,
I got 20.
you know,
But Gordon, in your regard, since you brought this up, you have already established all the things your neighbors are there. On 94, across where those houses are right after the other with 100-foot frontage or maybe less, that would be a real detriment in that neighborhood. So the medium, small, medium, large definitions need to be in place.
Well,
Yeah, I think so.
So it sounds like you support number four.
I support
Yeah.
them all.
I think
that will
that's
help.
important, yeah,
Yeah.
especially because of the definition of agriculture and forest.
You got something, Mike? I think everybody is focused on that one issue as being primary, that you've already addressed in the definitions, and that's accessory use. I think maybe that ought to be really emphasized in the purpose section.
That these are all accessory
Or
to the.
what, you know, whatever, because like Ron said, we probably need to go over all the uses, like everyone else. I wanna see all this happen, but everybody's concern is the same, that we need to have a fair and balanced outlook on future development. We really can't go back and penalize.
again, well, for example, Freestone Pottery, great place, great cottage industry. But at what point does that become, when she's got trailer trucks, it's never gonna happen, we know that, I just use it for an example. But what would stop it currently from being a distribution center of multiple things going out the door? We have no, once we allow the special use permit, many times, we don't limit it.
So I think the framework is great. I think everybody should have individual input that we can share. I think all those are good reasons. And I really think that just listening, I've been listening to what everybody's saying. I think everyone would feel more comfortable if that was, keep it in the definitions, but bring that right home in the first few statements, you know, so everyone who refers to that ordinance knows the origin and why we as a planning board in the town is trying to encourage all these things.
Well, what you can do is you can flop the definitions, so you can put the definitions in the beginning of the ordinance.
Sure.
Well,
So-
I think that should be, we need a mission statement as to what we're trying to accomplish.
How about a monetary,
Accessory.
wait, accessory use means I make a living doing X, and I do this other thing, no?
Well, let's
That's-
say, because you can have a farm, and maybe you own the farm as a supplement to your day job, but now you want to do something accessory to the farm. So that's why I do think that what you can do is in the accessory use, it talks about a principal use and a subordinate use.
Right,
We can clarify that even more, so you can talk
Yeah.
about if you're making X amount from your principal, your subordinate can only be
that's what I'm.
49% of it.
That's what I'm just saying,
Yes.
monetary, I want
Yes.
to use a monetary.
Or percentage, so,
Yeah, whatever.
yes.
Keep in mind, you do allow home-based occupations, that's an accessory use, and probably in many cases, that's somebody's primary income. So it gets a little tricky. So I just wanted to bring that up to you. So if you, that's what I mean, accessory use can be challenging sometimes to sort of clearly define and really
Well, that's why
simplify
we
the
gotta start
criteria.
working on this individually now.
Have you ever, or any other ordinances that you've worked on for other cities and towns, clarified or dove into principal versus subordinate even more?
Not beyond
Or maybe we
state.
can work together, like I can send you
Sure.
some.
The problem is that under state zoning enabling, all cities and towns, as you know, they have to use the state definition of accessory use. It doesn't, so we have to use that as a starting point. It doesn't mean that you can't perhaps embellish it to more, to try to define it under what you're looking for under this particular section of the ordinance. That could be helpful.
As long as it doesn't hurt.
Just ask for clarification, I think everybody but me does understand this, but, you know, our farm is maybe an example, because we have the farm, we live there, and so maybe its primary use is that we live there and it's a farm, but my husband's shop, my husband's woodworking shop, which is 1,000 square feet, and that lumber storage, it has been our main income for 33 years. And so, which is principal and which is accessory? The building is an accessory, or whatever it's called, customary home occupation.
A simple way to do this
So I'm just not.
is that the primary use on all these is really your residence. Even a farmer, for the most, they live there. So the accessory use farmers may argue with me about this, but you could say that the accessory use is really the farm, the primary use is their dwelling unit. Just like a garage is accessory to your dwelling. You're not gonna have a garage without having a house nearby. Wouldn't make any sense. So you could look at it that way, because if you try to define it by income generated, it's just a slippery slope.
Okay.
I think I find the income, I mean, I'm not saying that it's a terrible idea, but I think it's very difficult to follow up on it and actually calculate these things, because how do you get these numbers from these people and know that, so it's not that it's a bad idea, it's a very difficult thing to enforce, I mean.
That's what, again, getting back to the performance measures, that's why when I worked with a group of planners and we put this together, we thought, we acknowledge this is hard to do. And that's why you're struggling with this. It's not the easiest thing, that's why it hasn't been done previously. So they all thought that if you can establish reasonable performance standards, if you stay within those standards and you're not creating a nuisance, the use is okay. Once you cross the line on those performance standards, then the use isn't okay. And that's why I tried to come up with performance standards. Other than noise, they're pretty simple and easy to enforce. Lot size, setbacks, things like that that are very objective.
So you look at scale.
Scale, size of buildings, you're either under that size or not. Try to keep it simple like that.
And it's easier to enforce because it's visual, you can see it.
Exactly.
But
But income is very tricky. You don't want to start looking at people's tax returns.
No, it is.
That's,
exactly.
you don't want to go there.
You don't want to see mine.
Okay,
So, it sounds like you have
For
a pretty good
businesses.
plan of how you want to go forward, so I think we've already covered this part. The next steps, it sounds like you're in agreement that you want to use Ron's proposal, everyone will fill in your individual comments, meet at your convenience, it could be next month, it could be whenever you feel you're ready to pursue this. Then I can incorporate your comments into a revised draft. One thing I just want to bring to your attention, and Cheryl and I talked about this, is the need again to have stakeholder input. Other towns have really, and I know it's hard because I live in a town like Exeter, and it's hard to get people to these meetings to get their feedback. But one thing that we perhaps could do,
When you jeopardize their business.
You can put it on a hot topic night.
right?
Full house.
One thing you could do is when you feel comfortable with a draft, it's not a final product, you could have a workshop where you invite the public. I could work with Cheryl and we could develop a little story for the local newspaper. That's a good way to get the word out. And you all know who the key players are. You could contact them by word of mouth, put up signs in local businesses, have people come and we can walk them through what we're trying to do before it goes to your town council. That way people feel that they have some input early in the process, it's not a done deal, and you're genuinely seeking their feedback. And we
bottom
can,
line, if it pre-exists zoning and you publish it that way, I don't know how many people would be hesitant. You're talking about somebody that has a new idea. That might limit it down the amount of people that would, because it does pre-exist zoning or pre-exist the ordinance, so I don't see it as a problem.
you never know until you ask your fellow residents.
Yeah, just that, this has come up before for economic development, and you definitely want to have input and understanding and agreement before it's enacted, to make sure you don't leave any holes. But one of the things we don't do, okay, is talk to the folks who have successful businesses in Foster. And not all of them are traditional, So I think, even if it's a campground or bed and breakfast or whatever, we need to hear from those folks. I think there's a lot of knowledge out there that's relevant because of the folks who live in Foster and we have a successful business in Foster. when we're trying to encourage folks to take advantage of accessory uses that are at scale for their resources. Because one of the things we're kind of talking around is the fact that we have established that the accessory use is subordinate to the primary use, whatever that may be. You can identify it. So this is something else they want to do, and I think they want to be successful. And probably the most reliable information will be from people who have, over time, been successful in business in Foster. Just hearing what Helen said about a woodworking shop, could be that. I've heard people who have interest in, asked me about, well, what about if we wanted a bottle of water? It sounds odd to us, but there's a lot of good tasting water in Foster. I've heard a lot of residents brag about, I've got the best water in town and so forth and so on. But there are these little sidebars that folks go off on sometimes, and a little bit of guidance sometimes from people who know how to be successful at Foster. Limited market or collective marketing can help them a lot. So if someone's already successful in the wood business, maybe that little bit of wood that they get on their own property would be an attractive purchase for someone who markets and distributes wood already. And we have we got Jeremoth Logging, for instance, where, that's the guy's business, and he's very successful at it. So, and we've got the Rhodey Egg Farms, Ralph Berkowitz is way out there successful with his business.
Wright Brothers with the wood logging there.
Yeah, we've got good folks in town, and including Gordon, who has developed additions to his properties and, enjoys a certain amount of success. So those folks, when they speak with authority, and they have a lot of credibility for the other people in town who might want to move in that direction. The other thing that would do is reinforce the decision we make. So if we adopt these standards and procedures, and for lack of a better term, just rules and regulations, and the folks who are already in business and successful adopt that and support that, then there will be a general acceptance in the town. More likely, the folks who have not ventured down that road are going to feel better about, well, geez, there were 4 or 5 people in the audience who were available to us to tell us how they've been successful in Foster, and they buy into these rules and regulations because they know how hard it is to make a buck nowadays. Just a thought, it'd be kind of a good effort.
Always have something you haven't thought of.
Yeah, and that's a resource for us going in this direction, because not all of us are in business,
Michael, I couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree with you more. I, being new to Foster, if there's any way that the planning board can help me putting together a list of those particular businesses that we could reach out to.
We don't even know who they
I'm just naming several of them. So,
Yeah.
putting the article in and using the traditional sources, the traditional methods of getting the word out is essential. But if we can, send a letter or contact those businesses somehow, and encourage them to come to that kind of a meeting, then, I think that would be valuable.
There is an extensive list in the comprehensive plan of agricultural type businesses.
We all know that the only people that come to these meetings are the naysayers, right? Okay, so the less naysayers we want at the meeting,
Well,
the
that's-
better off. Sorry, Mike, let's get 400 people in here and we'll get nothing done.
No, everybody looks at this and they don't have a problem with it, then what's next? All of a sudden,
Sound like a naysayer, Ron. You sound like a naysayer.
No,
So
The
I,
auxiliary used to my house is my wife,
anybody have, I just wanted to ask a question about the wedding receptions and banquets and stuff like that. Does anybody think that's a bad idea completely? I mean, I don't personally have a major problem with it.
Size, small place, medium,
It's
large.
already being done.
I would say you definitely need a special use
Yeah, definitely, I mean, it's listed that way in the license from the council, but I'm just saying, I think it's something we should look at. I mean, there was one here almost here before that got shut down to a special use permit, but, you know, because of, it was probably neighbors.
Alcohol.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's just, it's proper property, so, good for the town.
That could almost be categorized as event, as an event, because it may be a wedding, maybe a retirement celebration, anniversary, whatever. If you, that's where the size comes in, because what happens, and this is the chief coming in, when we actually had people in here who owned a beautiful property and were trying to supplement their income with weddings. And when we got feedback, we found that it was plenty of room for parking, beautiful site, everything was a plus, positive outlook. The impact was on traffic control, simple as that may sound, and security. Because given, 150, 200 people at an event, you now have a change of responsibility. And we've only got a few guys on the police force, and a few guys on the fire department, and only one rescue unit, that can get there quickly. So, it has to take on as an encourage it, it's in the right venue, but it would have to be looked at for a time of year. It would have to be looked at for
That's why I'm suggesting that people do individual work, so we don't sit here
I'm just using
for hours doing this, and, ramblings,
I didn't bring this up. This is about.
But what if
This
we
has a
all
lot
do
to do-
individual work and everybody's got a different opinion?
Yeah, but this particular issue of event planning, that, is now being proposed as an additional incentive, and this controversy about it, it has a significant impact on the town's ability to provide the services that are needed. So what needs to be done, whatever the individual comments are, great, but everybody has to remember that it inherently produces a stress factor on the police and the rest of the folks who may need to respond. And they need to be, they need to pay. It's like the police detail. You're gonna dig up the street, you gotta pay for the police.
I think a possible simple solution to that is if you you put the amount of people at a wedding, if it exceeds 50, you have to come in front of the council. If it's under 50, it's a printed
That's
special use
exactly
permit.
what we need.
And then the council looks at the individual place and you can set the restrictions at that point. Maybe you can put something like
I
that.
think that there are already something in the town over 50 people at an event. You need-
I just use that number.
But I believe that, I know when they had like the festivals at Maple Land and stuff, because he was selling tickets, if there was over 50 people, he had to have a police,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's separate.
yeah. Pour so many porta johns for so many people and.
because he get a special permit, for that event. Special event.
No, she could apply for the entire through the year.
I'm talking back when Dave was there years ago.
And I'm sort of in agreement with Ron on this, that it's probably better for us to.
Oh, yeah. No, I just was throwing that out there to see if anybody.
But, yeah, you could.
Yeah, Ron's about ready to levitate.
And, you can, over certain amounts, you can, require police, you can require, ambulance kind of.
Yeah.
We've done it for dirt bike races that have special use permits for the property.
And things like that, so those things are solvable.
Yeah, yeah, I don't see a
But I
problem.
agree with Gordon's special use.
Yeah, because it depends on the location, sometimes too, the type of road it's on.
Yeah.
For the next meeting, do you want to have a target for July, or do you want to take more time to?
We've got a lot of time. If we're first gonna get this, we're gonna write our comments, we're gonna send them in, we're gonna get them back, we're gonna have a meeting, right? So we're 3 meetings away from
Okay.
probably going.
We're only having one meeting in July and one in August, so, in August.
Maybe
See-
August,
We'll see
yeah.
what our work, what comes up as far as there's any application. Usually the summer's pretty quiet. but we'll probably talk in August, second,
Yeah,
Okay.
our second meeting in
for
August.
August, yeah. We can
It'll be
send
the
you
Third Wednesday in August.
Sure.
our, like a red line,
That would be
stuff
great.
like that, and any other questions or assistance.
Okay.
But I think all.
Yeah, 'cause I know that this meeting in June, we're done, but I don't know, it's July yet.
Okay. All right, I will let you get back to the rest of the items on your agenda. Thank you so much for your time. Look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, Scott, thank you. So everybody's gonna make their comments and send them on to Cheryl. I guess. We can do it as a Word doc, because it's already a Word doc, so we don't on the computers, we just
I'll go on and
Everyone.
like double space it for you and send it so that
Okay.
there's a lot of
as
comments.
a
And then,
document, and
yeah.
then we just,
Yeah.
then we just
and then add your
Send it.
comments and send it
send
back.
it over
yeah.
to Cheryl. You have time, but don't wait till the last minute. Like we usually do.
I'm happy to do it.
Do you-
I have it, so, double spacing everything, and then also maybe leave some space.
Right, in each
You
section.
can take it back to sample.
Okay.
We trust you.
The next thing on the agenda is a comprehensive plan update. I believe, Cheryl, do you want to speak on this at all?
Sure, I did meet with our consultant, last week. So we're at draft 2, he's incorporated the comments from what I heard from the planning board. Basically, our next step is getting the maps finished. So that's really the next criteria to move forward with any more documentation. I probably will send to Kevin Nelson over at Statewide Planning, where we are right now. He's very flexible, which is good, but I would like to get something into his hands, just to let him know that we're working on this, we're not ignoring it. As you know, I don't have a lot of GIS experience, so I am gonna work with Mason. He's actually coming into my office next week. So
Chris Mason.
Chris Mason, yeah, Mason Associates. So he can see what I have that's accessible on my computer to see what I can actually generate from maps. Because that would be obviously to our benefit to do as much in-house as possible. And we'll take it from there and see what I can accomplish in office. And then at some point soon, I would like to get the comp plan out to, all the foster organizations, including the land trust, the conservation commission. Go down the list, make sure they all have a copy in front of them so that they can, have their input at this point.
So we gotta put it out for public comment on the website,
I haven't done that
To
yet.
to that point, or we're not
I
ready for
think
that?
I'd like to get the comments, make sure that we're completely
Town.
from the town, right?
And then go to the public.
I didn't know if they were going to all at the same time, or if it's going to be done separately.
I think we should phase it. I think I would like to get the
Well, that's
input
fine.
from the town
As
first,
long as that's
and that's okay, we can do that,
good
yeah.
for the state. So they'll get, well, if you get this to Kevin Nelson, then they'll come back and give us comments back.
Yes,
And obviously, there's still more work that has to be done, so things that will still be filled in
right.
on the plans that are complete.
Yeah,
And of course, without the maps, there's some questions in it.
absolutely. There's some nuancing that has to get done, like writing, sort of introduction, a better introduction, perhaps with each section, and, just some language changes, but that should be pretty easy. That I totally.
Great.
coming.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
All right, thank you, Cheryl. All right.
He owns Mason Associates, so he does, a lot of GIS work, but he's going to take a look to see what I have on my computer.
You guys have to speak up.
Sorry about that.
you know?
Yeah.
It's like there's a little
First
conversation
Nation
going
owns the
on over
company
that
and,
side.
that David Westcott is the consultant. He's gonna handle it.
I was just asking who Cheryl was talking about. I wasn't sure whether Chris Mason was the consultant that we were working with from
Yeah,
He owns
the
the
company.
company.
Yeah.
All right, so that's everything on that. Any, future agenda? Can we please get that?
we've got to get these future agenda items, we got to get something off, wind turbines, we should get
Next
them.
meeting, we're gonna have a presentation from Wind Energy Development, and we're gonna continue discussing the ordinance after the presentation, so everybody's good. Give everybody a little more information, try to see if Mark can come in and answer some of our questions, so we could, have somebody that's.
Who's Mark, the guy we went to?
Yeah, but he's gonna come in, so, work with us, and just do a presentation to the public also, so people that are interested can see it. And then we can, we had a lot of questions on different things that we couldn't answer ourselves, so I think it'd be helpful if somebody can answer some of those questions while we're working through it. It might make the process a little easier. But we'll see how that goes, but that's gonna be on the next agenda, the 21st. And the marijuana, what are you thinking, probably August?
July or August.
Yeah.
Well, if
Oh, wait, we got
if we're
July.
doing
We got-
this-
Yeah, we got him on, we got July still, right? So probably the second meeting in July. We can probably get back on that.
July meeting,
Gotta get,
July
I know you were working on
19th.
that, you've been busy, so.
Is that July 19th?
Yeah, I think so, because it's,
Fifth,
I know we don't have calendars
the
anymore.
5th is the first. Mike,
Mike didn't give us any calendars.
What do I do?
No calendars.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
calendars
it's the
this year.
19th.
No.
thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah,
Okay.
the 12th is
The
the
19th,
And then
yeah.
the August meeting is going to be the 16th? Is that?
Okay, 16th, yeah.
Yeah.
It's coming up quick.
So the plan is what? We're gonna
Do the wind ordinance, wind turbines at the next meeting.
have a presentation, are we gonna try and
Yes.
finish the ordinance?
Well, we're gonna work on it, I don't know how we finish.
So then basically, we're gonna
Obviously,
be
we're
in
gonna discuss.
August to write the ordinance. We're gonna be in September to start the marijuana ordinance.
We're gonna go in July, we're gonna look at the marijuana. We'll see where we get with the wind, and we gotta go from there. We
Well, we're gonna try-
don't know what we're gonna accomplish until we have a meeting and we work on it.
Well, I know, but
And see where, because I think we've got a lot accomplished. There is another draft that Juliana had done before she left, that I have a copy of that we'll get out to everybody from our comments at the last meeting, and the changes that we did make at that meeting, so. And of course, we had a few applications, so that's why we kind of dropped it for a little while. So we're gonna get on the next meeting run, and hopefully we can accomplish quite a bit on it, and then we can see what Lou says we gotta tie up and get it done, and then get it off to the council. And I mean, usually, if we can get the ordinances, we always like to bundle them and send them to the council with two, more than one thing, so that I have
Yeah.
There's
multiple
zoning
public hearings.
ordinances, so they're gonna have to be advertised and posted.
Right, so usually we did them 2 or 3 at a time last year, I think the last couple of years we've been doing it. But usually, I know when Juliana was doing, she liked to do it that way, just solicitor. So you were advertising for 2 things instead of just, everything separate. But we gotta get to that point first, obviously. All right,